goes from the economy to crime and now the border. The Democratic Party is much stronger than people think. Simon Rosenberg, welcome to the program. You know, I'm watching this and everybody overseas is watching this, and you can imagine America's allies, for all sorts of policy reasons, are very keen to know that President Biden will be re-elected for all sorts of rules of the international world order. What do you say to them when they look at polls, for instance?
Sure. I mean, I think, look, my basic take on the election is that Joe Biden is a good president. The country is better off. The Democratic Party is strong and been winning elections all across the country. And the Republicans are fielding the most unfit candidate in our history, who has, and so I feel good about where things are. There has been a lot of overestimation of Republican strength and underestimation of Democratic strength in recent elections. And so when I put all this together, and I was very accurate about what happened in 2022, I would much rather be us than them, and I think it's far more likely that we win than the Republicans this year.
Tell us again about 2022.
Sure. So here's the way to think about this. Since Trump became clearly MAGA in the 2017-2018 Congress, the Republicans have struggled terribly in elections. We had a great election in 2018. We had a great election in 2020. We unseated an incumbent president and won the Senate, which was hard to do in our system. And then something very unusual has happened. In our system, when the party in power always loses seats when they have the presidency. They lose congressional seats, they lose Senate seats, they lose state legislative chambers all across the country. And in the last 2 years, the exact opposite has happened, something historic. We've defied history. We had an extraordinary midterm where we actually gained a Senate seat, we gained governorships, we gained state legislative chambers all across the country. And then in 2023, we actually did better than we did in 2022. And we won in places like Ohio and Wisconsin that are difficult places for Democrats to win. And so since Dobbs, it's my view that something really broke inside the Republican Party in the spring of 2022, and that since Dobbs happened, the decision to end Roe v. Wade, there's been a basic fundamental dynamic in our politics that's played out again and again in election after election, which is that Democrats are overperforming expectations and polls, and Republicans are underperforming. And you're even seeing that start to play out here in early 2024.
One of the main things, you say Trump is a less attractive character and candidate today than he was in 2016. Now, one of those things that Democrats feel is unattractive, but his supporters do not feel, is the 91 counts and the 4 indictments that he has leveled against him. And now that the Federal Appeals Court has denied his desire to be given presidential immunity, saying that he is not immune and that he can be prosecuted with all the rights of a defendant, that he's just citizen Trump. Do you think that will impact, whoever needs to be impacted? Obviously, it's potentially MAGA voters will, come out for him as they have done in the past.
I think that Donald Trump is a far weaker candidate today than he was in 2016 or 2020 for a whole host of reasons, right? His performance is diminished, but importantly, getting to what you were asking, Chris, and I'll do this quickly, is that there's going to be 6 things that voters know about him in this election that they didn't know about him in 2020. One, that he raped a woman in a department store dressing room. That's been litigated and decided by a jury of his peers. Second is he committed massive financial fraud, which is about to be, finalized here. Third is that he led an insurrection, and he's promised now to end American democracy for all time. Fourth, that he stole America's secrets, lied about it to the FBI, and shared those secrets with other people. Fifth, that his family's taken more money from foreign governments than any political family in American history. And finally, he singularly was responsible for ending Roe. We have 6 disqualifying events that have happened that we're going to be able to use as people in politics to be able to push him further and further away from the electorate, which is why I'm so optimistic that we can win this election this year.
So with all that data that you've just given us, would you explain then for people who are completely confused about the polls? Why then do polls give him such a lead sometimes, a little bit of a lead other times, Biden a little? I mean, it's really difficult to understand what the lay of the land is.
I agree with that, and I don't envy anybody trying to figure out our crazy system from abroad. This is a hard thing for those of us in the system every day to make sense of. But the way to think about it is the polling is showing today, to be fair, a close competitive election. Trump is not definitively ahead. I mean, if you, just in the last 10 days, there have been 4 major national polls showing Biden actually gaining significantly, and 3 of them he's actually substantially ahead. So the way I view it is we're looking at a close competitive election today, which is not surprising because one party is having a real primary, the other party, our party, isn't really having a real primary. It's not surprising that Republican voters are showing up more in the polling. There's more intensity for Republicans in the polling, which is, I think, making the polling a little bit more Republican than it will be in, let's say, 3 or 4 months. When Democratic voters recognize that it's going to be Trump and Biden,